All right, everyone, we are live with Dr. Rod Berger, but he gave me permission to call him Rod. So we're just going to go for Rod. He is a journalist, an education analyst, and author of The Narrative Edge, Authentic Storytelling That Meets the Moment. His work has taken him into conversations with some remarkable people across sports, culture, and global leadership, including the likes of Magic Johnson, Formula One champion Jenson Button, and yes, even Pope Francis. What I appreciate about Rod is the way he approaches every interview with curiosity and a kind of steady, thoughtful presence. He has a talent for finding the human center of a story, no matter how big the moment or the person sitting across from him. Rod, thank you again so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you, Daniel. That was a very, I was just such a nice opening. That was, I should have recorded. That should be like with my alarm clock. You know, it just goes off, and I hear that, and I say, "This is going to be a good day."
Well, it is a good day. Every day is going to be a good day. But so before we get into just, the incredible places and the work you've done, I want you to just kind of paint the picture just as young Rod, where you grew up, kind of what was important to you, hobbies,
Hmm.
interests, just keep it young and innocent.
Okay, wow, young and innocent. Well, I appreciate that. Now, the innocent part I don't know about. Now, so as you say that, it changes where the path I was going to take. So, grew up in the Detroit area. Was born in Dayton, Ohio, but was there for a blink and of a moment, and then grew up in the Detroit area. My late father grew up in Germany during World War II. So when you talked about sort of that, like lighthearted or that
Oh, yeah.
innocent, right? It was a different world for me. So I gravitated. And people who have, maybe if they read the book or they follow my stuff, they'll know that I gravitated towards adults, even when I was a kid. I was fascinated in their stories. I was the kid, not because I was there to bring an apple, like sort of the proverbial apple to the teacher or whatever, but I just was interested in adults, and I was comfortable enough talking with them because, my father was a pretty tough guy. And so, sort of the challenge of, and the mystery of an adult was always fascinating to me. But as a kid, that would be sort of the more serious side of me, just a rabid sports fan for my Detroit teams. Like unbelievably so to
Well,
this point.
I won't hold that against you.
Hey,
I'm
you
from
joined
I'm,
the Big Ten. You're in Nebraska. You joined the Big Ten. I went to Michigan State. But I love all Big Ten, so I'll root for Nebraska.
well, no, so I'm actually from Wisconsin originally.
Oh,
So I'm
there
a
you go. Even
Wisconsin
better.
through and through.
By the way, Madison, Wisconsin. I don't know where you're from. Were you from? Did you live in Madison?
No, so I was born in Chippewa Falls, actually.
Okay. Okay.
But
So
my mom grew up about an hour south of Madison, and they actually live in a small town now called Broadhead, Wisconsin.
okay. I'll say this for people who are looking for places to go with their families on like a summer vacation or whatever. Madison is it's such a jewel, like this hidden jewel. I just really enjoyed my time whenever I've gone there, and it's been for like professional opportunities and some different things around speaking. But I just have really enjoyed the energy there. It's just the water. It's a really beautiful town. So that was big for me. I played competitive sports. I was in travel soccer. I was just very dedicated and competitive in that way. But everything for me, sports and sports figures played a massive role for me. They didn't know it, but they were like a big brother or a parent for me. So I was the fan that I heard this earlier today in an interview. This NFL player was talking about, true fans are the ones that, if the team loses, they're impacted for however long in between that next game. That fan, like, it's colored sort of their life, that's me. Like through and through to this day. Even my children, they know the history of my Detroit Pistons. They know Bob Lanier and Dave Bing and how we came out of Fort Wayne in Indiana and all. Like, so I'm a passionate one that is passing that along. So that was really my youth, was my addiction to sports, and then to adults' curiosity. And I love news. I grew up on 60 Minutes even as a kid, but that was a way to connect with my dad, just about the world. But yeah, I knew at a very young age, things about the world that I don't think a lot of kids did, just because of the exposure that I had to those stories.
Yeah, well, that's great to get kind of shed that light onto what young you looked like, because it really, you can see that through, what you've done now in your career, because obviously you're very good at what you do. And I was a little bit of the same way, maybe not to that extent, but like I would read encyclopedias. I would just read, not read the atlas, but just look at an atlas and like study maps and like things like that. And then again, I completely agree on the sports stuff. Like I said, diehard Wisconsin, everything, Bucks, Brewers, Badgers. Not
Yeah.
really going too great right now for most of those teams. But no, so I resonate with that a lot, actually. And so, was there a particular journalist that you were kind of attached to as a child, or was it? Yeah, I just want to kind of talk
Yeah,
about that.
fair question. A good one. I really loved. I'll go back to 60 Minutes. 60 Minutes was my. I mean, every week it was like a Super Bowl for me as a kid. Like I just loved the sound of that, the secondhand ticking to let me know the show was starting. Mike Wallace was my. For those that don't know, research Mike Wallace. He was very combative as an interviewer, just infamous for his approach. And he could sit down with world leaders in all parts of the world and potentially very dangerous sort of adversaries to our own country at that time. I mean, he had courage with his words, his presence, and his curiosity to bring all of us into worlds that we would never have a ticket into. And so I greatly appreciated that. And there was such a confidence in his ability to communicate and not worry about whether or not you would be offended or you didn't like the question, because through an interpreter, it didn't sort of land right or politically sound in a sound fashion. And so he was my number one. Now, in parallel, Mitch Albom, this goes back to my Detroit roots. So Mitch Albom is a very famous writer, and people will know him probably for Tuesdays with Morrie. That was a famous book that came out in the 90s, and there was a movie with Jack Lemmon that played Morrie. And Mitch Albom won, I don't know, it was like 10 years in a row, I think, sports writer, columnist of the year.
Oh, wow.
Nationally. So look up Mitch Albom, but I don't know how many books he's done now. He went from being a jewel and a gem to Detroit in the state of Michigan to global, right? He's just absolutely incredible. So I've always followed him and his journey, and I just love listening to interviews that he does now about his process. And so I've always enjoyed it. But I will say this, Daniel, to put a bow on that part of it, people will say to me, like, if I convert that over to TV and watching people, I love watching, especially news programs where I enjoy the host, the journalist, whatever you want to call the personality, but mainly because of the way in which they use English, like their line, like their turn of phrase. There will be some that it doesn't even matter what they're talking about, but I think about how their brain on live TV is able to take in information and weave that into something that understands the audience, what's going on in that moment in time, and what the broader show is going to be talking about. Like all that to me is a skill that is incredible. So I just love turn of phrase. And when my brain hears that, I think that young person, they need to know they've got a talent in this area to be able to communicate in a way that packages together the things that we feel and see in something that is very expressive.
Oh, that's awesome, because you can really tell the difference. I mean, I don't need to get into Fox, CNN, and NBC, whatever. It doesn't matter. But you can really feel when the interviewer or the anchor or whoever is actually speaking from their heart and having intelligent comments. So I just really resonate with that. I like that a lot. So you said you went to Michigan State. What did you study? And did you, again, you were super into 60 Minutes and things like that. Did you know you were going to be a journalist, or what did you go to school for?
So, well, one, I think journalism, I don't even call myself that. So it's interesting when people do that. It's fine. No, it's actually, it's always a fair reminder to me just of the world that we live in that way. But I think a lot of that is sadly dying. Our understanding of what the free press is and how we approach that. And you've got the popular press and so many publications that are now all the content's paid for. So it not kind of, but it muddies the water, let's just say. And so that's sort of a different thing for me. But I did. Yeah. My dream was to be a correspondent on 60 Minutes as a kid. I went to a small school in Chicago, Columbia College, which is not so small anymore, to study that. And I eventually transitioned to Michigan State, and I studied psychology and went down that path. But the reason I did that is because I had opportunities as a teenager to speak publicly to schools. I had been a part of nonprofits, and I had a teacher who's still a dear friend who saw something in me, and thankfully I understood that the universe was saying, "Hey, this is an adult that's taking interest in supporting sort of a world that I didn't know existed." And so he kept pushing me like, "You need to be doing this." And so I ended up doing a lot of public speaking around the country and as a teenager. And because of that, that changed a bit of the dream, because while I enjoyed the soundbite, or I enjoyed, I'd go and intern and check out radio stations and all this stuff, it was the connection with the human, like the other person, and what that looked like, that really interested in me. So psychology was powerful because it really helped me hone the value that I don't know if we put as much value as we should on the power of curiosity and the role questions play in advancing our relationships, our passions and pursuits, right? And so for me to get into a world where questions are at the base of everything, I think about all the thousands of interviews I've done, and I know that I am tapping into that world of not being afraid to ask or to push the envelope and get an understanding of sort of who you are across the screen or in front of me, and that's been very, very helpful in interviewing when I've been in front of sort of very famous people, or to not get nervous to a point where I can just sort of be in the moment. That's definitely grounded me or helped me.
No, that's a wonderful insight, because we'll get to that eventually, because some of the guests you've interviewed, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know how you do that. Like, it's crazy. But like you said, if you understand the psychology and how the human mind works and how to connect with people, it gives you confidence to go into that conversation. So that's really neat to hear. So yeah, I love that. So I guess, what made you decide to? 'Cause I'm not 100% sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So you were never really did you ever work for like a big network, or were you always kind of independent, or how did that kind of?
Always independent and freelance.
Okay. Yeah.
That always was my.
About that decision.
Yeah, I think that's. I don't know if that's my. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know where that comes from. Other than, look, I've always been a dreamer since I was a kid. Like, I can't see like a whiteboard or a blank piece of paper and not want to see how far that horizon line can go. Mm-hmm. And so a little bit anti-establishment in that way, right? Sort of being boxed in, like my brain I go to different places. So I want that sort of freedom. And so, yeah, I mean, I just kept plugging along. Like, I was asked to start podcasting way back when, and I would get one, and that would go well, and then I would let other people know, I interviewed Daniel, and then they'd say, well, you interviewed Daniel, then yes, you can interview this person. And so I kept stacking those up, and then I reached out, and I got access to an editor at Forbes, and I interviewed her for Scholastic. I was asked by Scholastic to be one of their 3 columnists, and I was like, okay, who do I want to, this is an amazing platform. And so I interviewed this editor, and then I waited 6 months, just would say happy birthday or whatever. We developed just sort of that friendship at a distance, right, professionally. And I finally said, because she said I was the first person in 30 years that asked to interview her, which was great. Oh. And I just said, can you give me a shot? And she did. And so I kind of fell into that, but it was always along the lines of, it maps to how I work. And even to this day, everything that I do is in that vein of freelance, because I found that there's value in that even if I'm working on a project for one group, a media project or a storytelling effort, or I'm speaking to an audience over here, the other folks that I interface with are going to benefit because I'm going to bring either those experiences or, so I try to find the value in all of them, even if they're not officially connected. But I do love that freelance freedom.
Yeah, well, I think it's cool because you're not. I mean, obviously, you probably have political views, but you're not pushing a political agenda. You're not kind of boxed into, Fox News having to be conservative or CNN having to be liberal or, things like that. And it really comes across in your interviews, just raw conversations. And I appreciate that very much because as a person, sometimes that's hard to find. So I love listening to your interviews so much.
Oh, thanks.
So I kind of wanted to get into that again. We talked
Sure.
about how the psychology background really helps, but like, for example, you're sitting down with Magic Johnson. I mean, he's one of the most iconic basketball players of all time. He obviously has a pretty significant disease as well. But how do you really honestly stay grounded and not let the moment get too big and just talk to him like a person? Because I think that would really benefit me just for advice
Oh,
talking to
yeah.
future guests.
I mean, here's what else. So one general rule it's not a rule, but it's become a bit of a rule, even though I'm not a rule guy in this regard. I generally approach interviews and I'll say it to myself, or if it happens to be that I have to interface with a handler or handlers or publicists, it's like, look, if I can find, like a lot of times people will say, just talk about this or only talk about that. If I can find that information in a press release, like I'm not going to ask you about it because I don't think it's interesting to an audience. And while you can take that literally, to me, it's also a frame of mind that says, if it's so pervasive in your social media presence, or it's something that is so readily found, why am I going to waste the opportunity to like sit with you, even if it's remotely, like to sit with you and to talk about something that thousands of other people have talked about? So when I was going through my own development as an interviewer, I would sometimes have to remind myself, like try to find the interesting angle. Like what is left or right of center? I don't mean politically, just like what is not sort of dead center that everybody would ask, and ask that or lean into that. And that goes for, I mean, it's fun when you bring up like Magic. I mean, yeah, intimidating, right? Because just his sheer size when he walks into the room. But like that to me, I have a couple of thoughts on that. I mean, yeah, I knew the gravity of that. Right. And I knew, and I potentially have something like that coming up quite short here in real time. And I'm sure I'll sort of tag into my memory so that I don't lose that perspective. But I went with my gut, I started off that interview and I didn't just ask him I don't know, I didn't waste the question. And it's funny, I'm looking at the image now because there was someone on production that was there with their phone, and they took a candid shot of me sitting with Magic that I've put out on social that I love because I took a chance, Daniel. Like I didn't take a safe route. What I did was, so for those that are diehard NBA fans, there was the famous phantom foul in the 1988 NBA Finals.
Yeah.
Where Bill Laimbeer got called for a foul on the great Kareem Abdul-Jabbar of Milwaukee Bucks fame as well.
Yeah, baby.
Lou Alcindor, right? And it's a famous sort of non-foul that actually turned the championship series. And so you had a soon-to-be 12-year-old and me, weeping because we lost, and we felt like we got robbed, right? So that's how I started that interview with him. I literally said, all right, Magic, like when it was, lights, camera, action, everything, it was like, I said, come on, let's just be honest. That was the phantom foul, right? Or whatever, and we did, he had this big laugh, and then we just had this great conversation. Mm-hmm. And that was a great reminder to myself that one, I can't take myself too seriously. Two, I'm a human sitting in front of a human. Mm-hmm. And three, I was able to be very efficient in my wanting to connect. Because anytime I think you're talking to somebody, whether you're on a first date or you're in trouble at work or you get pulled over for speed, whatever, you want to develop some level of connection so that person sees a human in you, and maybe the punishment isn't as bad as you might have thought, right? And so, or whatever, it doesn't have to be punishment. And so I was able to collapse that timeline, and he could see that I was human and that I was making my best faith effort for him to have an experience that was hopefully a little bit different. Now, challenge with a guy that's been interviewed, I don't know. I mean, could we really count the number of interviews this guy has done? Right. I just can't fathom what that looks like. But I also, then as you were asking me that, it makes me think of, so people will talk about like that as an experience. Yes, powerful experience. I'm glad I was in the moment because then I wasn't worried about getting it right. Now, for myself, I am famous in my own world of my head of doing that. Like if I sat here and prepared like crazy for an interview, 9.5 out of 10 times, I will not go with whatever I prepared because that camera will turn on or they'll walk into the room and something will spur something in me to ask something different. And we'd go on a very different course. And I'm okay with that. I actually enjoy that because you can feel that you're sort of in that zone. But I've been in environments where people have said, like, all you get is no, don't. I mean, it's like Habib, the UFC Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah.
Nurmagomedov. I mean, I got a chance to sit with him inside the octagon and interview him. And it was like, okay, this guy's incredibly intimidating. Before I walked into the octagon to interview him. And if people don't know him, terrifying. Just look up his highlights. This guy was unbelievable, right?
I've watched him.
He was just...
he's one scary son of a biscuit, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, very, right? And so, but what's fascinating is that his people thought they were like, how did you get him to laugh? I didn't intend to. But what happened in that is I allowed myself to just be in the moment and pick up on little things he said. And we didn't talk about fighting. We didn't talk about his record or any of these things, or, being famous for wrestling a bear and seeing it on YouTube when he was a youth or whatever. Mm-hmm. He ended up talking about wanting to go back to his small village in Dagestan and to sell vegetables. And those clips went viral because all these fight fans were going, we never knew this about this guy, And I could have taken the easy route. I could have just asked him questions that anybody could have basically subbed in for me and asked. But I didn't do that. So that can be sometimes anxiety provoking because you walk into situations going, boy, I'm throwing this up,
Yeah,
I hope what I throw up, they catch coming down because this is different. It's a different angle. But I just think that makes a unique experience for that audience. Like last year I got asked to capture a keynote with Opal Lee. She's the grandmother of Juneteenth. She's now 99.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Right. And I write about it in my book that I'm having lunch with her. There are 1,500 people in the audience. And I'm sitting there with her, just getting to know her before we go up. And I wanted to ask her it dawned on me, I should ask her about Martin Luther King. And why, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that. And she shared a story where she was going to meet him in Fort Worth on his one visit to Fort Worth. And she ended up not going that day because one of her best girlfriends was having her first baby and was like rushed to the hospital to have this baby. And in her mind, it was like, well, I can see Martin another day. Well, of course, that did not happen. And in the moment, Daniel, I thought, I can't share that story on stage because you think naturally the story is you want to hear about what it was like to be in the presence of Martin Luther King Jr. and that this is what they talked about or something, right? But that's how I actually closed that conversation in front of 1,500 people. And you could hear a pin drop because it showed more about her character, that she would be there for a friend that didn't have the notoriety of him. But like that was the story. So it wasn't that what you would like going back to the original, like the press release or what you think someone is going to want to talk about, right? How many championship rings or whatever it is, because that's the stuff that lets them know they're human and you see that in them. And then I think that they acknowledge that even without saying a word, like non-verbally, there's an acknowledgement that, whoa, you see me. You just aren't trying to take from me. And I understand why they can feel that way.
No, well, that is incredible advice because I try to do that with my guests as well. It's like you said, anyone can, and I kind of get it's almost easier to interview someone famous than it is not really famous. You know what I mean? Like, because it's easy to interview someone like, like you said, Habib, where you can find everything online about his whole life, blah, blah, blah. But like, if I'm interviewing someone like as a community leader, I don't really know anything about them besides, what they're doing in the community. So
But that's a
I
fun
just,
challenge, though, Daniel.
it
See, like
is,
I
it
think, right?
is, it is very fun. So that's what I've loved about podcasting the most is kind of that challenge between famous and not famous because I love what they're doing, but anyone can Google, you know, like you interviewed Terry Bradshaw, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like anyone can Google Terry Bradshaw and be like, oh, here's his life story, and it's an easy interview. But you have to ask those more intelligent questions and to do something that someone, like you said, hasn't done before. Like he wants to go back to his hometown. Habib wants to go back to his hometown and, just sell vegetables. So that's what I love about what you do. And it's great advice for me as someone who's just starting to do this. So before we get into a quick break, all right, so I want to talk about a moment in your career that very few people on earth will ever experience. Interviewing a pope. Obviously, you interviewed the late Pope Francis, excuse me, not in a religious context, but in a humanitarian one. Just, focusing on education, leadership, and the future. How were you able to ground yourself in that moment? Because I feel like that's probably, I would imagine, one of the more difficult interviews of your life.
So here's what's interesting, Daniel. I think about, I don't actually think about like sort of the parameters of an interview. It's more of an experience.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is because for me, experiences and those that lead up to that, whatever that sort of event or experience is, help me to understand what I'm in and amongst, and so that I'm hyper aware of what's going on. Right. So the context of that was being there in Rome. There was a summit on the refugee crisis. We've never had so many refugees on planet Earth in our history. And so I was there with all these, United Nations people just way above my pay grade, right? Just from an intellectual standpoint, and their work in a geopolitical world that is incredibly unstable and volatile. And so that was eye-opening for me in a lot of ways. And so sharing space with the late Pope Francis was a part of that entire thing for me.
Hmm.
And I say that because I had to I wanted to channel all the refugees that I had met across Africa in different places and the impact that they had had on me, because that then helps me. That goes kind of back to that point that in essence, I am just a facilitator of a conversation for those that don't have a voice. So when I'm doing that, so the story that I did in Forbes on that encompassed a lot of different elements of refugee life and those in the NGO world that are trying to provide support, bring and platform people that are doing great work and the needs that are out there beyond what we might see in a popular headline. So for me, it was all of that. There's just there's nothing sort of that I guess like sexy or exciting to say other than the most tense part about probably that process, which is actually good, was the whole press pass experience I had to have, with the officials. I mean, that was just pretty bizarre, and the security and just all that went into that was both sort of exciting and pretty wild and sort of pinch me moments in that regard. But all of that was great because it helped me to just be in the moment, capture some things just to get some perspective so that could support what I, talk about in the story and the gravity of it. Right. And what he represents and the church in that regard. So yeah, it was a fantastic moment, but maybe I don't give it enough credit just in its own right in that regard. But a lot of it is because I immediately think about all the refugees that I've seen that will never see an Instagram account. They will never understand what it's like to have, 30 different combinations of outfits to wear in a given week. I mean, they're in a different world in that regard. And I honor that. So I think of those folks.
Well, that's wonderful. That's, I can't even imagine going through all of that. But, so we're going to give you a chance to kind of highlight your book and read an excerpt from it. So everyone, before we continue, I want to take a quick moment to highlight Rod's book, The Narrative Edge, Authentic Storytelling That Meets the Moment. So just take it away, read an excerpt, and it's all you.
Well, here's my thought, Daniel, as we do this, and I appreciate it being part of your show. So I want to acknowledge Wiley, my publisher. I don't know if it's about me but I'd rather, if you don't mind, read just some of the testimonials on the back, because it's,
that's just
because
fine.
They're the ones, and to highlight what they do, right? It's because the book is a collection of stories, but I weave in my own experiences so that you don't feel as if I'm telling you what's going on, but I'm hoping to bring you along for the ride. And like Scott Harrison, he's the founder and CEO of Charity Water, one of the most successful NGOs on planet Earth. If you haven't checked out Charity Water, they're absolutely incredible. And I actually collaborated with them on my book launch to raise money for Charity Water, but they're unbelievable. But Scott was saying in his testimony here on the back, just that I understand what water represents more than a resource. It's a story of hope, resilience, and human dignity. And the narrative edge to Scott provides NGOs and global leaders with the tools to transform statistics into soul-stirring action. It's not just a book, it's a blueprint for fostering global empathy. But I have so many people that have been so kind to me in their contributions, and I look at the different countries that are represented just on the back here, and those are the pinch me moments, because these are the people doing the hard work, and I'm just the one capturing the story. But I will say it was. There's a wonderful writer and a journalist, and she's won a Pulitzer Prize, and she's an author herself. Her name is Karen Klein, Rethinking College: A Guide to Thriving Without a Degree. But we haven't spent a ton of time together, but what an impact she's had on me, and for her, and to win a Pulitzer, and for her to give me an endorsement about the humanity in storytelling, and that's on the back of this book, means a lot. I guess we'd just say, if you're interested in it, check it out. You can get it. It's an audiobook as well. You can go to wherever you want to get the books. I'm working on the field guide, Daniel. The publisher's having me work on. So that's a different style of writing. But it's basically, if you want to learn how to understand stories in your world, that's what and I'm about 3/4 of the way done with that one. So hopefully that'll come out in the fall here of 26. But I'm just honored that I've been given a chance to do this. And one of the most fun experiences was probably recording the audiobook. That's a world I never even understood or knew. But because of my audio work, I was approved to do that through that licensing. And that was a fun experience to do. But super powerful stuff when you get a chance to sit in those stories, right? It's not about me. It's about these people that do great work.
No, for sure. That's exactly what I'm all about as well. And everyone out there listening, please go check out that book. Purchase it wherever you get your books, whether it's, the audio version or online. And be sure to send me the link wherever we can get it. And I'll just spread the word like gospel.
Thank you.
Because I think it'll be super powerful. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little fun. I mean, we've been having fun, but I'm going to do a segment I've never done before.
Uh-oh.
It is called Thanksgiving Table. And
is this the Festivus table like Seinfeld, or is this Thanksgiving?
It could be whatever.
You're younger than me, Daniel. Did you watch Seinfeld? Are you a Seinfeld fan?
So I'm younger than you, and it's actually funny. Like, I'm pretty sure Seinfeld's probably a good show, but my dad would force feed it to me.
Oh.
And so I wasn't really into it. I'm more of the Office kind of guy.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yep, yes, that's a generational thing. Yeah. So Festivus was a very funny classic thing in Seinfeld, where they call it the airing of grievances. So. Anyway, I'm sorry. So please, this is your Thanksgiving segment. All right.
So this is my Thanksgiving table. So you are at a hypothetical Thanksgiving or Festivus, if you will. Doesn't matter. And you have 3 people you can invite dead or alive, just to sit with and enjoy Thanksgiving dinner, who are you inviting?
Well, here's what I would say, because I don't want to get in trouble, and I'm going to be mindful of this too. So I would just say that my family's out of town, so that way I can pick and not just give you
Okay,
a
there we
flat
go. Yeah,
answer.
that's
So
fine.
like family's out of town, but I'm at a Thanksgiving, and there are three people. There is definitely someone I talk about in the book who I think about on a pretty semi-regular, like not all the time, but he's sort of there. Mawa Emmanuel, he's an individual, young man that I met who's, I think, 28 now, at a refugee camp called the Mvepi Refugee Settlement in Uganda. Would absolutely want him there. He embodies sort of the perils of what it means to be human and the opportunity to hopefully make a difference in somebody's life at some point in time. And I hope that light shines on him, because he's a refugee from South Sudan who has outgrown. He can't go to the school at the camp of 75,000 roughly refugees because he's too old. So he's in basically purgatory, what we would call purgatory. And so he's there, and most of his family have been lost in the war in South Sudan. And so he is literally the human that sits there in a like a plastic chair that's from someone's yard in Nebraska or Detroit that somehow gets shipped over to Africa, just staring out at the horizon line, not understanding, not knowing if there's any hope or a reason to be hopeful about tomorrow. So I think about him. I would want him there. I don't know why this hits me now, but I had an opportunity. It was in Africa, but I was able to cross the Gambia River on foot, and I went into this very remote village, and there was an imam there. You had multiple clashes of sort of culture and religion, and I was told at that time the imam had like a 3-year-old, and I was told, don't look at the child. That would be disrespectful and whatever. And the irony was, I was the only one that looked like me there and was Western, and the little child, thought I was fascinating because I was different, and the imam completely welcomed it. And so all the sort of the fears of, and I wanted to obviously respect where I was. This was not about me; it was about respecting them. But I would love to include that imam into that Thanksgiving, just because that was such a wonderful lesson for me in both respecting others, understanding people want to maintain their dignity, and the role we can play in that. So I think him, and then, just because top of mind, maybe I would have in that, I would want Karen Klein there, that Pulitzer-winning journalist. She's just such a thoughtful woman that I would want to have her energy at that Thanksgiving. And as I'm thinking about it, Daniel, it would be pretty awesome because of her work and what she's done as a writer and journalist to have conversations with these other two gentlemen. So, but I could come up with just countless combinations of interesting and fascinating people that have surprised me, stunned me, just given me the grace to share space with them and be curious about their work and their contributions to the global community. So,
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful Thanksgiving table. That even was a little more powerful than I thought it was going to be. I was going to give you my Thanksgiving table, but it's going to sound lame now.
no, come on, Will, come on. Who's at your Thanksgiving table?
No, it's a wild combination actually. So I'm Catholic, so I grew up very, very Catholic. So I was thinking about this when I was working on my outline. I'm inviting Pontius Pilate,
Okay, there.
just because I think that would just be fascinating. He gets painted as such a villain, which, I mean, he did sentence Jesus to death, but he washed his hands of it. He was under immense pressure. I just think it'd be an incredible conversation to talk to
Yeah.
him. So that's kind of weird. But and then you said family wasn't allowed, but I'm gonna pick my late Uncle Jim,
Okay.
because he was a farmer, and he just taught me the grace and the care of animals, and that means so much to me. So I just would love to have him back and talk to him. And then I needed some laughs, so I picked Steve Carell, because obviously I'm a huge
Oh
Office
yeah,
guy.
Office. No, but yours is incredibly interesting. I think my only, yeah, if I had different types of tables, one would have like Larry David, because I just love his humor. And sometimes in life,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think if I could just pay Larry David to hang with me for a weekend and he could communicate about all the craziness that I'm seeing, even when I go to the grocery store, like great. But then I would have some iconic sports figures, probably. You know,
Oh,
that would be
yeah.
my.
I mean, we can have a separate sports table. That'd be cool.
Almost like the kids' table, right? I want to be at
Yeah,
that table.
it's like the kids' table. So no, that was fun. I'm gonna have to do that with more of my guests. I really enjoyed that. So yeah, I just want to ask you kind of what's on your horizon. Obviously, you're working on that other book, and if you have, any interviews coming up, or just kind of give you the stage for what you're up to in the coming
Thanks.
months.
Yeah, I am hoping that there's going to be a lot of stuff in my world. It's like it's sort of off the record stuff until it's on the record kind of a thing. But I hope to go back. I'll probably be back in Stockholm. I spent a lot of time in Stockholm. I've worked with the Upper Foundation and WaterAid, and then their work with Charity Water, which has allowed me to speak in front of royal family and dignitaries, and that's an amazing experience that I've had. And I've gone to Africa with them a couple of times, so that may be on the horizon. I've got some keynotes coming up. I'm going to be working on a fundraiser and hosting that called Soul Hope. They work in Uganda on getting chiggers, which are these. It's this very sad thing that happens to kids. It gets into their feet and they can't walk, and it prevents them from going to school. And it's just this whole thing. And Drew Colley is an amazing guy who started Soul Hope. And so they've got their fundraiser coming up, and I'll be there for that. And then I've got something here in the next 10 days that I'd love to be able to tell you about, but we're still finalizing some of those things. But I will say I will definitely be channeling some of those experiences like Magic and Habib. So I'm excited about that. And then I'm working with people on some independent media projects and books that they're wanting a narrative sort of partner in. So that's pretty exciting stuff, and I enjoy that, helping people unlock their story in a way where they can get that down and contribute to society. So lots of good stuff in that regard. But again, sometimes I will tell you, Daniel, there's so many times where I could be in a call with you right now, and in an hour I get a phone call and find out I had no idea I was going there. Like that was one of my trips to Uganda. I was walking with my kids in the neighborhood. I get a phone call, and 6 days later, I was on a flight to Uganda. So,
Oh my gosh.
But I love that. And I totally welcome that. That kind of stuff is super fun. So, we'll see. But then, the book and all that good stuff. So,
Yeah, well, again, I can't thank you enough. I'm just going to ask you one last question before we sign off. Just any advice you would give to, I know you don't think of yourself as a journalist per se, but just kind of just people in your space, how to just get the confidence to do what you do, because you're not scared of anything. Just advice to young people out there to, just spread the word, talk about community and the issues going on. And it doesn't need to be political or right or wrong, just kind of spread the word of, what's going on in the world.
I mean, I guess the first thing that comes to mind, Daniel, is just that I think finding our authenticity, right? Finding our voice. Like in writing, people talk about, if someone wants to write a book, they'll say they search for an agent or a publisher, and they're always going to look and make sure that, has Daniel found his voice? They always use the word voice. But I think that applies to all areas of our lives and what we do. It's in essence, have I found my voice? And in that, I think there's a lot of confidence that can be gleaned from, am I being authentic to myself? Literally, am I being who when I go to bed at night and I think about what I could do or what I can do, am I channeling that and sort of honoring that? And if I'm not, I know when I'm not, and I'm taking the easy road because I'm fearful or I have anxiety or people are going to think, why I don't belong here. I just don't subscribe to that. But trust me, I still walk around and I'm still anxious, and I wonder if people sort of, I have the same questions everybody does. But it always helps me to think about, am I honoring the work that I've done or what I am so passionate about? And so giving that permission. To your point about community and young people, I love speaking. I'm speaking at some schools coming up across the country, and that's always a message. Young people have a voice, and when you let them know they have a voice, it's amazing. It sounds so subtle, but they're so powerful, and we need them more than ever in so many different disciplines and areas of our lives across the world. And so I love to give them, hand the keys over in that regard. This is not about me telling them or another adult. I always enjoyed the adults, Daniel, that would acknowledge that they were not born as the adult you see in front of you. They were just like all of us. They had their pitfalls. They took the wrong turn and they finally self-corrected or whatever. Those that express their human side of them, their humanity, that's what I think attracts community involvement, appreciation for your community, finding the gems that are out there that don't have opportunity or platform. So finding that authentic voice and just honoring yourself and what you bring to the table.
I love that. Well, everyone, thanks so much for listening to our conversation with Dr. Rod Berger. I just appreciated your honesty, the stories and perspective you brought today. You bring so much intention to your work, and it's been really a privilege to explore that with you today. So for everyone out there listening, thanks for spending time with us. Check out his book, listen to his interviews, listen to his podcast, and we'll see you next time.